Travis, you're not coming in here? Moral support?
Welcome to Sam's Garage, presented by NH Oil Undercoatings. Coming up on this episode of Sam's Garage, Sam and Kevin tackle the engine and transmission fluid dipsticks in the Jeep Rock Crawler. Then Sam and Doug install a new steering column in the Alpha 1 GTO. Later we join Sam as he takes a trip over to the NHOU facilities. To finish things off, Sam installs a new chrome alternator in the 68 Camaro. With the engine and transmission installed in the Jeep Rock Crawler, Sam and Kevin install new locking dipsticks. The dipsticks from Low Carb Performance are perfect for this application. The locking mechanism will ensure everything stays in place and no fluids leak out.
Kevin, we're knocking out this list pretty easily. We got the transmission in, the transfer case, the engine's in. Now we have to address the dipsticks.
Yeah, if you want to come over here, I'll show you how this locking dipstick actually installs into the bottom of the transmission.
Cool.
It's hard to see in there.
Yeah.
What I thought would be good, so everybody can get a really good understanding of how this dipstick works, is to have a mock-up transmission on the table here. It's going to be really hard to show somebody. My fingers will be in the way under the Jeep.
You don't want to make a mess if you don't have to.
That's right. We've got this here to explain for people who don't get into the transmission all the time. They may not understand. The dipstick actually comes through here next to your valve body. And we got a little tight area that we've got a washer and a nut specially for this transmission. Each one, may have their own specific one. We might want to throw a little lube on there to get in there.
You want a good amount of lube when it comes to this bushing. And a lot of times I found it easier to put it on the actual dipstick first than put it in as a unit.
That's right. That way you're not trying to fight the rubber and the fitting.
And a lot of times if you're trying to fight it, you'll actually push the grommet into the transmission.
So as you can see, it's a tight fit. That's for two reasons. One is to seal, but two, we're kind of limited by the thread size that we wanted to have, and because we wanted to have a big through hole so that when you're filling the transmission, it's not slowing down.
Right. Okay.
So it's as simple as that. We would come back and we would torque this. We don't want to over tighten it because the fittings are aluminum.
Right.
And you can break
And you
them.
don't want to crush the rubber gasket
That's right.
as well. Right. So now let's see what it looks like on the car installed.
And just to kind of show, you can take the dipstick part. This would be attached to your firewall, which we'll do here in a minute. You can install the plug. Now you can transport this guy without it leaking.
That's cool. And on the engine side, this is a very nice feature. This goes into the block. Then you're gonna mount this somewhere on the engine block, keeping the tube stationary, and in the top locks. So under any kind of cylinder pressure, boosted application, you're not gonna blow this out and hit the roof of the dyno. Let's get them installed.
Thanks, Sam.
Oh, you're welcome, Kevin.
Last time I was here, we did the remote dipsticks that we did. We ended up taking all this stuff out because we had to make the headers and everything. We decided we'll go ahead and, since we're gonna do some serious off-road, we'll go ahead and put our locking ones in here. So I'm gonna use one of the holes, but.
I'm gonna remember you said serious off-road. That means we have to take a trip to Utah.
That's right.
I can't wait.
And like that, we've got a locking dipstick, and Travis can finish up the engine.
There you go.
Sam, thanks for the spacer you made.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that. So our standard dipstick is made to use the manifold bolts. We've got custom headers on it. Kevin made those headers, you know. So we're gonna have to put those in the actual stock location for this dipstick. We'll have to have the spacer that you made. Mm-hmm. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. All right. That looks very good, Kevin, and we solved a big problem you may not have in the future.
Well, you know, one of the things that I didn't mention is if we're upside down, which has been known to happen with me at the wheel.
Well, you better be at least sideways, almost upside down, if we're in this thing together.
Yeah, so we won't have any trouble, we won't leak, and we'll be able to check our fluids conveniently.
And I'm sure one day we're going to slap a blower on top of that thing, so those are going to come in really handy.
Absolutely.
Welcome back to Sam's Garage, presented by NH Oil Undercoating. Sam and Doug install a new steering column in the Alpha 1 GTO. The new modern column has electric assist to make it easier to turn the steering wheel. Doug is looking forward to this new addition as the GTO did not have power steering from the factory.
Here's the exciting part, Doug. We're going to add power steering to your car, which it did not have before.
No, it didn't have it at all before, and this is going to make it really nice with the wider tires and the way the suspension is set up onto it. Having a power steering onto it's just going to make it a lot nicer to drive.
Yep, and we got one that's got the power steering assist incorporated into a brand new steering column. It's electric, just like today's cars. It's going to give you that compact look, and it's going to give you the power steering that we need to be able to maneuver this car in the parking lot.
Yeah, it should work out just great. 3 bolts. I think we're going to be able to slide it right out. Should be super.
Let's do it. So I've got the column completely unbolted from the car itself. What Doug is doing is separating the U-joint that goes from the shaft to the rack. That thing has been connected for 40 years now. So it's going to be a little difficult, especially after it's been painted. It's got a little bit of undercoating on it, so he's fighting it a little bit. Then once the column is removed, we're going to transfer over our parts and fit the new column in. Now that we've got the old column out, it's a good idea to always check the new one with the old one, making sure the dimensions are correct. All I have to do is transfer my old parts onto the new column and then reinstall it in the car. The cool thing about this column is that it is adjustable so that you can place this motor anywhere up under the dash, keeping it away from any other components that are factory to the car. So when you're putting in the new column, you want to make sure to go in first to the splined shaft going to the rack, okay? That's going to line everything up as far as the flat spot goes where your bolt goes through. Then I went ahead and loosely installed the 2 bolts for the column up here. The motor can spin 360 degrees. So the best place I know to put it without changing the angle of the column is going to be right here towards the clutch side. And there's plenty of room for my foot to activate the clutch. So now all I got to do is tighten up the plate for the firewall with the 410s, tighten up these 2 12s, transfer over our parts, and we should be good to go.
Yeah, and it's also important when you're trying to go ahead and line up the shafts, you can run into it where it's closed because it uses a bolt to go ahead and clamp down onto. If you need to, just go ahead and get a little flathead screwdriver, kind of wedge it on into it, and what it'll do is it'll open everything up so everything will slide together. Then you can go ahead and line it all up, get your bolt and get it tight. Otherwise, a lot of times you're going to fight it.
And you know, it doesn't hurt to use a little bit of lube as well.
Yeah.
WD-40 or PB Blast. Now the ignition switch on cars are made to be tamper proof. Japanese, what they do is they take a bolt like this, it's a regular 6mm bolt with a breakable, removable head, so that when you're using your tool and they tighten it at the factory, the portion with the hex that goes, your socket goes on, breaks off. That's why you get a little piece right there. What I like to do is, if the head is high enough, I'll take a Ziz wheel and put a notch in it like a flathead, and that way I can get it out with a flathead. In this case, the aluminum mounting bracket is actually flush with the top of the bolt, so I would have cut into that. One way you can do is take a sharp punch like that, put a hole in it, then use that hole and use a hammer and twist it, lefty-loosey, and it'll eventually will come out. Then when you go to replace it, just put in 2 new screws and hopefully no one will steal your car. All right, Doug, that wasn't bad. It went pretty easy. The only hard part we had was that U-joint, but it looks like you tackled that pretty well. Now I'm going to put the steering wheel on. I got the switches transferred over, and I know we're going to get a new steering wheel, right?
Yeah, we are going to get a new steering wheel, Sam. And yeah, the best part about this whole thing was as I had the easy part and I got to watch you do the hard part, and that made my life a whole lot easier.
Well, you know what? Doing a column in a Japanese car is always easy for me. And now I can put the horn on. And we are good to go.
It looks great, Sam. Now we'll be able to move on to the next step and start putting the engine in to make sure everything's going to fit there.
That's going to be fun.
It will be.
Welcome back to Sam's Garage, presented by NH Oil Undercoating. Last season, Sam took a trip to New Hampshire to visit NHOU's very own Joe DuPont, who's leading the industry in vehicle rust and corrosion prevention. Located in the Northeast, Joe is all too familiar with corrosion caused from salt on the roads in the winter to humid environments in the summer. To get to know Joe DuPont a little bit more, let's visit where he started. For 37 years, Joe was a cabinet maker by trade, so solving problems was in his nature. 10 years ago, he had to solve a problem which was vital to maintaining his own business: how to stop rust on his own truck. Now, a family-owned business, Joe's wife and kids created NHOU to provide much-needed preventative maintenance for other families. NHOU's products are the fastest, least expensive way to add safety and value to your vehicle.
I really get into this business by desperation. I was trying to save my own vehicle. The diesel truck I had, I knew that was going to get me miles, but that I was likely going to lose the undercarriage to rust. I just wouldn't take no for an answer on how I could slow that down or prevent it. I did try some off-the-shelf generic products that seemed to do okay, but they didn't quite live up to our expectations. So ultimately, we ended up in a lab with a very good chemist, many years of experience in chemical coatings for automobiles, who helped us develop our first formula.
Oil undercoating makes up 90% of NHOU's business. Joe has worked non-stop to make sure his oil is the best, while keeping it affordable for every customer. Let's take a minute to understand how their high-quality products work. It stops corrosion by sealing off oxygen. If there's no oxygen, there's no rust. It displaces moisture, meaning water and even salt water run right off and quickly evaporate. It creeps, getting into all the little places in your vehicle's undercarriage. Believe it or not, this is where rust starts. It's long-lasting. You only have to apply it once a year. It's eco-friendly, non-toxic, and solvent-free. It comes in clear and black. We call it Back in Black. With high-quality products comes high-quality service. There are NHOU dealers all over North America who treat vehicles every day. NHOU is always seeking valuable feedback from the customer and improving their product lines. Most NHOU dealers started off as a side business and have become now full-time business owners. NHOU is looking to franchise, which is a huge opportunity for dealers and convenience for customers worldwide.
When they bring the vehicle in, we will assess it, and then as we start the application, we want to make sure that we provide them a high-quality application. So we're going to get in, make sure the product gets into all the nooks and crannies, again with a high quality.
NHOU offers excellent service like no other. They offer the best equipment, the best training, the best systems for easily managing their business, national marketing and advertising campaigns that send people to their location. Franchisees are part of the NHOU family, a name customers know and trust. To learn more about NHOU, you can visit them online or any local dealer and service provider in your area. If you're a DIY person, NHOU has exactly what you need. Want to become a dealer? NHOU can help set you up. Joe has a personal saying, if it's worth owning, it's worth protecting. NHOU gets it done. The 68 Camaro is back in the shop, and this time, Sam's installing a new chrome alternator from Tough Stuff. The higher amperage alternator will provide plenty of charging power for this muscle car.
Today we're going to be talking alternators. Now these old cars, a lot of them came with generators, and when they fail, the idiot light on the dash corresponds with the component. But the newer cars, let's say anywhere from mid-70s on, the alternator, when it failed, the idiot light on the inside of the dash showed a battery symbol. So a lot of people still today think that when the battery symbol comes on the dashboard, their battery is bad, when really you need to be checking the charging system. So in our case, our charging system was fine. We're going to be continuing our theme with Tough Stuff by replacing all the components. I've decided to go with a chrome one-wire alternator. Now they also have factory cast, and they have satin black. They also have 80 amp, 100 amp, and 140 amp alternator. Ours is 140 amp. Now, I went with the one-wire alternator, but they also have the standard alternator that uses the external regulator. In our case, we're going to be not using it, so I am going to replace all the wires. The factory wire that went from the heavy pull from the alternator to the regulator was very small because the original alternator was only 60 amps. So we want to make sure to put a much bigger, about a 4 or 8 gauge wire from the alternator going to the battery to handle the 140 amps that we're drawing from it. Now, if you guys are going down the road and let's say the light on your dash doesn't come on to let you know that the charging system is failing, you always want to pay attention to the lights on your car when they start to dim. If you turn your flasher on and your headlights or the lights start to dim each time that flasher comes on, then you know you got a problem with your charging system. The alternator and generators can fail without indicating on the dash, so when that happens, you want to check it. Another sign of a charging system failing on you is when you crank the car and it cranks slow on you. Now, it could be a dead battery, but if your battery is within 2 or 3 years old, then you want to check the charging system, making sure that it's not lying to you by not charging and also not indicating it on the dashboard. So in a case like this, when there is a painted block, a lot of these old cars are popular with painting the engine block. Well, that'll cause a problem when it comes to the ground. The ground alternators go through the body of the component. That's why on Tough Stuff, they actually add a ground pole on the body so that when you have a case like this where it's chrome, the ground circuit is not going to travel through the finish. So you add a ground wire here and that'll create the circuit needed to activate the regulator inside. If you don't do that, let's say you're doing a regular factory alternator, you want to scrape the orange paint off the block and you want to scrape any paint that's on the mounting points of the alternator itself, just so that you have a good ground and everything's going to work properly for you. I've already removed my old alternator. I'm going to go ahead and install the new one. Anytime you guys can replace your hardware, it's always a good idea to do so, especially if it's from 1960. Okay, so now what we're going to do is run our wires. Now what I'm going to do is make me a ground wire, and if you notice, it's the same thickness as my power wire, both being 6 gauge. And the reason being is your ground is only as good as your voltage, so I'd like to size them the same. Now this is red. What I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and put a heat shrink over it, turning it into black so that people will know if there's someone else working on the car that this is a ground wire. Okay, I got all my grounds and wires installed. The ground strap, I went ahead and utilized the bolt that the battery ground is at, cleaning it off first, and I got my power wire. Now I'm going to put on a belt. I am going to go get new belts, but before I do, I want to show you guys how to adjust the belt properly if you don't have a serpentine system. Put the belt on, get yourself something to pry with, and you want to give it about a 1/2 inch of adjustment when you press down on the belt. Now you have to remember that if you have a new belt, that new belt's going to stretch a little bit as it breaks in. So you want to make it a little bit tighter, or you want to go back in 100 or 200 miles and double check the tension of the belt. Now all I got to do is reinstall the radiator and battery, and we're good to go.